realizing the country's goal of universal primary education. Historically, the involvement of non-governmental organizations has greatly limited the Kenyan government's role in the direction of stewardship of these programs. Reliance on donor support and management has subjected the programs to fluctuating and often conditional support from the actors. Financial strains and infrastructural challenges have been the major setback in Kenya's ability to successfully fund and operate its own feeding program. Noting that the effects of the recent COVID-19 pandemic has really affected the primary attendance of schools. And you find that most children have not been guaranteed completion of their school learning. The risks for children during this pandemic have included families falling into deeper poverty, threats to survival, health and child safety, and exacerbation of the learning crisis. Widespread unemployment and income loss has severely affected households' financial ability to keep students in school, and for the poorest households, budget constraints have caused them to keep their children out of school. When schools reopened, in many parts of my county, Kakamega, children have not reported to school. Honorable Speaker, for the sake of that poor child in Kenya who fainted in front of the parade of food, for the sake of the poor parents, for the sake of us having high retention, for the sake of the child who fell prey of getting goodies along the road because they did not have food and eventually became pregnant, and for the sake of the children in the drought areas, and for the sake of the malnourished children, the school feeding program must work. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I say that it's important that in order for the government to ensure 100% transition from pre-primary to primary and to secondary enrollment and attendance, school meals are an important visual safety net strategy for the disadvantaged, vulnerable majority of school-going children facing security challenges in Kenyan households and communities. Therefore, I wish to request honorable members to support me and resolve that the government, through the Ministry of Education, through the relevant state departments, must develop a school feeding policy to ensure a coordinated approach to provision of school meals to learners at all basic levels of education, and propose budgetary allocation to sustain this program in order to ensure that children are maintained in schools for effective learning. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move, and I now request Honorable Omboko Milemba to second this motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me congratulate Honorable LC of Kakamega County for moving this motion on school feeding program. I'll be very brief that the earliest signs of trying to introduce school feeding program in Kenya can be traced as early as 1941, when the colonial government tried to introduce what was called the first national school meals policy, mainly to give proteins to students because the children were being fed a lot on carbohydrates. But the second most pronounced one would then be what the mover mentioned as the Nyayo milk, or maziwa ya Nyayo, which lasted for a period of about 10 years from the 1980s to 1990s. and put it in perspective that let us